Thank you. Hope everyone can hear me. Yeah, so I want to take a minute and thank Selenium for inviting me to speak about ethics, because it's not something that many conferences do. So let's give them a round of applause. It's one of the most important topics of our time, and we don't spend enough time thinking or even discussing it. It's actually so urgent that only last week you can see what happened. Like, Google contractors reportedly targeted homeless people for facial recognition, and the recordings of Mark Zuckerberg mocking competition and trying to get into the courts with US government if they are trying to break up Facebook. So it's really difficult things to talk about and solve, but we need to start talking about it. But most importantly, I want to make this talk because, like, being unethical is starting to become the norm in this industry. And if you think about it, this is beyond dangerous. I'm not here to talk to you about a new shiny framework or Selenium or anything else. Like, there are other folks who can do that better than me. I'm here to talk to you about how we messed up really hard, and what we can do to fix it. So here's the current state of ethics in tech through a single GIF. And here is how the tech companies think about being ethical. So we need to change that. But how did we get here? How did we get from a point where we started to building products to help people's lives and improve people's lives, to stealing data, to using evil tactics to sell data to third parties, among other things? Since I started researching about this topic and presented at the conference, I found 30 million results about unethical companies on Google. But something more crucial, 90+ incidents happened only this and the previous year around unethical practices of companies and users' data. And this is a big number. But let's take a look at some of the events. Here's like a couple of events I tried to find from even last year. But the thing is that every week something new will come up, even worse than the previous week. And already all these examples are already outdated, because new things came up and I couldn't keep up with the pace, which is devastating. But for a start, I want to break up these incidents into 3 different and big categories. The first one is technology and election interference. So you may have heard of Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica used people's data to influence elections, and I say elections because it happened in US in 2016, and it happened on Brexit, using fake news and misinformation to people. But you can find misinformation and fake news in a lot of different forms, like articles, edited videos, deep fake videos, and clickbaits. And they usually target a lot of these people with ads using all of these tactics. Now, the second category is Brexit. Brexit is deeply connected to Cambridge Analytica and what they did with US election as well. Brexit happened inside Facebook. If you don't know what I mean, I highly recommend watching Carol's TED Talk. She's a reporter from Guardian, and she's reporting Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, and election interference for the last couple of years, and how all of this is connected. So I highly recommend doing that. And what I said about Brexit happened inside Facebook is a quote from her talk, and it struck me right away because it was so true, and we couldn't see it. It was in front of our eyes, and we couldn't see it. What I mean, Brexit happened inside Facebook. Facebook serves you ads. Everyone has their personal newsfeed. Nothing is searchable. No one can see what you are seeing. So if you see an ad and you pass it on the newsfeed, no one, even reporters, other people can see the same thing. So that's an evil tactic that companies use, like for personalized experiences, to serve you with things that many times are not real. Except of that, you cannot even have a log of all of the ads you are seeing on Facebook. So that's why everything happens on Facebook, stays on Facebook. Nothing is permanent. The second category I want to talk about, and many people, maybe you will bash me for it, is smart home. Because with all of these devices and the connected home, many people are super happy that they can like say a word and something happens, like the lights are on and off. But I don't trust these companies, and I did a little research about why they are doing what they are doing. So they are trying to build all of these devices and sell it to people for mostly advertising purposes, so they can know more about you and they can serve you with better ads and better products. But they are doing that in a way that's not familiar to you, through voice, and we land on surveillance. So what they do is, believe it or not, they are hearing you all the time. They're not hearing you just when you say, hey Siri, hey Alexa, do that, or do some other thing. They're hearing you all the time, and they are hearing you to get all of this data up to their servers, and of course they're doing through surveillance. If you don't believe me, you can believe them, because they already said that that's happening. So Google Assistant, Amazon, Apple are already listening to all of our conversations if you have any of these devices at home. And the thing I want to focus on is how they do it, how they have all of these devices connected in our homes, and what they are getting from these patterns. So what they do, or what they want, is for you to have like your life, and they can take your daily patterns, like what time do you wake up, what time do you go to sleep, what time do you leave for work, and suck it all up and serve you with better ads, and have all this information to either sell it to third parties or to keep them in their own server. So they do that through patterns. And one of the scariest things is that they recently, they either started or will start using machine learning to analyze your voice. So if you are sick and you are saying something to someone, or you are crying, or you have a depressing episode, they will serve you with all of these ads about antidepressants and all of these things, which is pretty scary because you don't know that's happening, and that's actually what's happening. That's the scariest thing. Another thing that struck me during my research was that they are planning to move into buildings and into apartments before you do. So they are working with hospitals and contractors to build Alexas into their apartments. So yeah, I don't find that ethical, to be honest. And the worst thing is that all of these is invisible. The next tech revolution is going to be invisible because, and part of it, sorry, it's the smart home, and it's already happening. So yeah, be careful to who and where you share your data with. The third type of case I want to mention is the Volkswagen emission scandal. So where they build a system to trick the US officials to let them ship cars based on their emissions, that they were under a certain percentage, and they get caught. But the thing is that one of the engineers who worked on this product, he got into jail, and the company got out of it with just fines and nothing more, which was pretty scary because now you know that your actions have an impact and you cannot get away with it so easily. As you can see, and I hope you do, we have a problem. We have a really serious problem, and we need to start analyzing what's happening and what we can do to fix it. Because we should, and we need to do that. So I'm going to break the problem into four, again, big categories that will make all sense at the end. So I'm going to focus on the first one first. I want to talk about culture. Culture is a big thing, and you are building the culture of your company as well as building the product at the same time. So whatever decisions you make about your product, that's building your culture as well. Let's talk about Silicon Valley. Let's talk about these mythical places where all the unicorns are born, where unicorns don't exist, so you can make the correlation there. And all of this great stuff's happening in this bubble, and they all want to disrupt the market and create Uber for X, Facebook for Y, and I don't know what. And they're not thinking about the consequences their actions have into people's lives, most importantly. They're moving fast and break things, and this is the worst kind of like a culture thing every company adopted from Facebook. Because Facebook, it is what it is today because of this kind of mantra. They moved fast and broke a lot of things. They are providing us with misinformation, fake news. They are helping people at the government, again, serve you with not so many real things and ads. And now, again, on Facebook, I'm going to talk about this quote or mantra. Again, the future is private. Mark Zuckerberg presented that at the latest F8. And he said it with such passion and confidence that for a second, I thought that he believed it. So I want to talk about this message and what they want to do for the future of Facebook and decompose it to actually see what they actually want to say to us. So why they do want to merge their platforms. What they want to do is to merge Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp all in one, so it's like the same system, and it's not like 3 different companies, which actually that's the case now. So it's going to be harder for regulation to break them up. And again, how do they plan to encrypt our messages? Because encryption and merging the platforms was like the 2 strong messages from the last F8. And I want to take a minute and decompose, for a start, the second message, how they are planning to encrypt your messages. Someone will send you a message. Facebook, or Phoebe for shortcut, scans the message for malicious content. So what they actually doing is they are scanning your message so they can serve you advertisement afterwards. So I had this conversation with one of my friends where she wanted to start learning Swift, the Swift programming language. And she sent me a message about that, so I replied with book recommendations. And after she left Instagram and opened Facebook, she had like a Swift programming book advertisement in her newsfeed. So I don't believe that they scan the messages for malicious content. And then Phoebe, or Facebook again, will encrypt your message. So they will still going to track you and serve you with advertisement, but they are going to encrypt the messages at the end, which I don't feel that's what encryption means. So the last thing about the culture is that many of these companies are only focused on the positives, what good they are going to do in the world. So they are leaving behind all of the things that they can go wrong, or how people are going to misuse their platforms, misuse their services to harm others, or do whatever they want to do. Now, the second part of the problem is deeply connected with culture. Anyone has any idea what that may be? Okay. It's leadership. Leadership is deeply connected to culture. And leadership can influence culture in a good or a bad way. Leaders are quick to recognize what they are doing right, while being oblivious to the things causing them to fail. And if you think about it, that's really true. And if you take into account the news about how, for example, Mark Zuckerberg said that Facebook didn't have any way to influence an election. Afterwards, after all the facts and the information came to light, he changed his opinion on that. But I want to take a minute and see some examples of really bad leadership. Imagine that you are the CTO of one of the biggest social networks in the world, and you tweet something like that when your company saves the passwords of their users into plain text. So we are sharing this information to help people make an informed decision about their account security. We didn't have to, but believe it's the right thing to do. We didn't have to? Like, I cannot imagine saying that even out loud. So no, they didn't have to. They are obligated to do it, to say the least, because they are in a position in which they are because of people's data, nothing more. Needless to say that after 30 minutes, that tweet got deleted, but I was fast enough to screenshot it. And another case that I want to share with you today is how Jack Dorsey makes one misstep after another without thinking about it. Like, it's crazy. He says all of these things, how he tries to make Twitter a healthy platform, which is not. Let's bring it out. It's not a healthy platform, and you cannot have like healthy conversations without being targeted by a lot of different people. So Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey says company was probably way too aggressive in banning right-wing activists. I don't think that's a good thing to say. But 2 months ago, the new VP of design on Twitter said that he was disappointed that many of his staff, like the people who designed the new web version of Twitter, were targeted and harassed by people about their work. But wait, that's what's happening on the rest of the people who are trying to have like a conversation or something on Twitter. So that's what's happening in Twitter on a nutshell. And my response to that is maybe that's what it takes for Twitter to start taking harassment seriously, because until now, they don't do enough to stop harassment on their platforms. So maybe that's the tweet or this behavior of people harassing the Twitter staff will kick off a conversation in the company. The thing about leadership that I mentioned before is that all of these leaders and CEOs and executives have like their head in the sand. They really don't know what's really happening, and they don't want to take action on important stuff. Now, the third area of the problem I'm going to focus on is regulation. Well, this is a big topic, and I can even create a separate talk for regulation, but here's how I feel about regulation. I'm searching for it. I cannot find it. And that's the case because we moved too slow to even have a conversation about regulation. And in a nutshell, regulators don't know how tech companies work. One of the most famous questions from Mark Zuckerberg hearing in Congress was, if you don't charge money for Facebook, how do you make money? And the answer was, Senator, we run ads. So you can see that many people regulating tech, they don't know a thing about how tech works. And OK, you will say that the $5 billion fine to Facebook from FTC was like a big thing, and Facebook got punished, and it's good. It's not. I want to take the time to decompose what that fine means for Facebook. And here's a pretty good tweet to explain it to you. So even though I don't agree with Alex Stamos on the first part of his tweet, so the real threat to the tech giants is competition, not regulation. And everybody is missing what really happened today. Yeah. The threat is regulation as well. That's why every tech company trying to run away from regulation. But I want you all to focus on the second part of the tweet. Facebook paid the FTC $5 billion for a letter that says you never again have to create mechanisms that could facilitate competition. So what that means? So you may go to Facebook and say, I want access to your graph. Facebook will say, FTC won't let us. You may say, I'm trying to create like a data app that and I want to use Facebook data. And Facebook can say, FTC won't let us because of that letter. And the conversation can go on and on and on. So that's what really the $5 billion fine meant for Facebook and us. But I want to focus on a really positive thing. I know I'm bringing you down today, but I want to focus on a positive thing about the fine. So now Facebook really needs to think about all of these evil practices that they are using throughout the company. For example, one of the most ugliest tactics that I ever saw is to verify your Facebook account by using your email and your email's password. And I cannot believe that this product passed through managers, engineers, designers, product managers, and no one said nothing about it, which is pretty crazy. And one of the personal stories for me is that when I tried to enable two-factor authentication on my account, and I explicitly said that I don't want to use the SMS option, and I want to get my password through 1Password, they enabled SMS verification as well. And as soon as I realized it, I switched it off. But yeah, it's weird tactics, to say the least. The fourth area I want to talk about, because we already talked about culture, leadership, and regulation. I want to bring it to us and mention uneducated public. Because really, the public don't know how internet works and how tech companies behind the scenes work and how valuable their data is to these companies. And they really don't understand how valuable, again, their data is for companies like Twitter and Facebook. In addition to all of that, people don't know how to keep themselves secure on the internet. And we end up with using the same password for every account kind of mentality, which I'm trying to make my mother stop doing that, which is pretty hard to say the least. And again, we come up with statements like, who cares about my data? Well, a lot of people care about your data, and a lot of companies are like billion or trillion-dollar companies because of your data. So your data is really important. And the ultimate result is to value convenience more than privacy. And that goes back to also the smart home thing that I mentioned before, where we, again, value convenience over privacy. And I want to take a minute and, again, share a story how easy it is for hackers or anyone to get into your apartment through these devices, from cameras to thermostats, and get access to your whole network. Because between the device and you, there is nothing than just low-tech security. But what happens when people know what's at stake and they take actions? After Cambridge Analytica, 25% of US citizens turned ad blocking on their browsers, on their phones. So I believe if people are informed about what's happening and what's at stake, they take action. Again, I came up with the question, what we could do to change that narrative and start fixing this problem, because it's a huge problem and we don't seem to take it seriously. So we can keep ignoring it, or we can work together to solve this problem. Again, I want to focus on 4 different areas for providing a solution, with the first one being leadership. What's ethical leadership? Ethical leaders need to take a stand and say what's right and do what's right in front of others or when they are alone. They don't, they need to intervene and take action when something unethical is happening. So they need to lead by examples. Ethical leaders need to lead by example, need to define and align with their own values and care for themselves so they can be able to care for others. Again, let's focus on the first one, lead by example. Leading by example is the best way to ensure an ethical business. They need to promote good conduct no matter what. Leaders need to be willing to intervene informally to steer behavior in their organizations and resolve emerging problems. Second thing, define and align your values. We don't, if you are a manager or if you are a leader of any kind, you don't want people who do not share your values. You want people who are lying, who are getting behind your back, trying to trick you. So the personal moral credibility of leaders can be very important in enhancing the effectiveness of ethics regulation. So hire people with similar values. It's that simple. Promote open communication. Be as transparent as possible. Trust can get you really far, and with trust, you can work more openly and honestly with your co-workers. Be aware of bias. You can find bias everywhere, either in the real world or in the digital world. How we are developing machine learning for products to how we treat employees at work. No tolerance for ethical violations. And the third one, care for yourself so you are able to care for others. Take your vacation. Have a steady schedule at work, 9 to 5. After 5, don't expect to receive any emails or make that apparent to your boss or manager. So everyone there can really copy you in a good way and really try to be like you in things like that. So yeah, take care of yourself and stay hydrated. The third area of the solution I want to talk about is an engineer's code of ethics. In everything we do, we follow a code. But in engineering, that's not what's happening. We need to set a universal set of rules. I don't want to call them rules, but they are rules. So the first rule, be responsible for the work you put into the world. Value impact over form. Accept full responsibility for your own work. So if you do something unethical, trying to steal or read people's messages, data, anything, you should expect to be punished. Ethics in university. Again, this goes back to how we want the new generation to learn and to learn how to treat engineering in a more general form. What I mean is that when I was at university, I took an ML class and machine learning class, and I had a pretty interesting conversation with one of my professors where in the introduction of the course, he didn't mention once about all the bad outcomes that machine learning can have to people's lives and how machine learning can impact people's lives in a not so good way. So he mentioned how good machine learning is and what we can do to improve people's lives, but again, we missed the point. And after having a conversation with him, he didn't change his mind, of course, but yeah, that was my observation from that conversation. Regulation, again. It's a really important topic, and the people who are going to regulate tech, they need to get advice from outside people that they are working on tech, and now there are like a lot of people who want to help regulators and regulate tech. So they need to get advice from them. They also need to have a change of mindset of how to think about regulation and tech. They need to not set anything in stone, to be highly adaptable, and for the laws to be highly adaptable, because tech is moving so fast, and regulation needs to move as fast. And the last area I want to focus on as a solution is to educate the public, educate them how to be more secure in the internet, what it means for tech companies own their data, because tech companies own people's data now, whatever they say. And you are the product if you're using anything free on the internet. Data has become, without any of us noticing, this set of almost secret currency of the modern economy. So really, people need to take that into account and then take the action to say no more. Privacy is a fundamental human right. I didn't say that, Tim Cook said that, and I think that you all agree that's a pretty bold and true statement. We have a duty toward the humans on the other end of the screen to build a product that they can love and trust. Thank you.